Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishtam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So we were discussing Yogin Mass reminiscences, and in our last class, we saw that Holy Mother was on a pilgrimage tour to Haridwar, and then they went from there to Jaipur. So she visited different temples, including that of Govindji, which is the famous temple of Jaipur, a very ancient temple. And we saw there that there was a vision where Yogananda was about to be attacked by Sitla, that is smallpox. Smallpox could be very fatal in those days. Those who had smallpox, either they lost their lives, or even if they survived, there would be marks on the face. There would be a lot of marks which would be which will never go in their lifetime. So that smallpox, there is a deity even for the smallpox. It is known as Sitala. Sitala is the disease which they say is the deity, and uh, among the different Shaktis, there are so many Shaktis. Some of the Shaktis can result in death. So as we saw in the Chandi, all the positive forces, the good forces are also manifestations of Shakti, but Shakti can manifest in a negative way when it can harm the gross body or even kill the demons. And so there are certain forces which we cannot deny. That is the truth of Prakriti, that some way or the other, these deities, the smaller deities, they come in the form of disease, pain, and many things. So Sitala is such deity who has to be pleased. This deity has to be propitiated. And in the villages, especially villages in Bengal, they believe a lot in these things. Though for the modern man, it may look like a superstition. But people were afraid when such diseases, pandemics like smallpox, cholera, plague, there were so many pandemics in those days. And people resorted and prayed to these deities, offered different things. We do not know how far these superstitions, or maybe the so-called superstitions, they were all matters of faith. So here, Yogananda was about to be attacked. That's the vision which Holy Mother had seen. And Yogananda saw in a vision that Sitla Devi, and through her grace, actually, she he was relieved of his fever and maybe the smallpox which was about to attack him. So that's what they believed. And then they purchased some rasgullas and offered it to the Sitla temple, which was nearby. And Holy Mother said, please offer some rasgullas, because by the grace of the Master, by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, where we saw that Holy Mother had a vision where Paramahamsa Deva says, you please leave the place. So Sitla Devi uh, tells in a vision to Holy Mother that I would have attacked this person, I mean Yogananda. I would have taught a lesson. Yogananda got this particular vision, and suddenly she said, I would have attacked you, and perhaps he would have died of that disease. But Sri Ramakrishna somehow, that deity had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna, was telling her to leave immediately. So this vision had a profound impact on both Swami Yogananda and Yogin Ma. They recorded it. They saw that it is possible for the divine to intervene whenever there is a crisis in somebody's life. So belief in God, the grace of God can ward off such evil spirits or the impact of such deities whose purpose is to put an end to human life. Though it may look a bit superstitious, but this is a fact what we find recorded in Holy Mother's Gospel. So immediately there was a Sitla temple, and Holy Mother asked them to purchase 50 paise worth, which was a big amount in those days, worth of rasgullas, and offered it to the deity. From there, now from Jaipur, Mother then returns to Calcutta. And after a few days stay at Balram Bosa's house, that was the house where she normally stayed when she was in Calcutta, because Udbodhan, the house at Udbodhan, or the Udbodhan house as it was known later on, was not built. Mayer Badi as it is known. So before going to Kamarpukur, the trains normally went up to Calcutta. So from Calcutta, one had to take maybe some other train or travel by foot, partly by foot, partly by train up to Tarkeshwar. There were so many routes to go to Kamarpukur. So after spending 1 year in Kamarpukur, she goes to Kamarpukur after spending a few days in Balram Bosa's house in Kolkata. And then from there, after coming back from Kamarpukur to Calcutta, she went to stay at Nilambar Babu's house, which was rented. It was a rented house, especially for mother and all her disciples, Yoginma included. So she stayed that in October, November of 1888. She stayed for about 6 months there. This happened in 1888, 3 years, 2 years after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, a little more than 2 years. After that, she went on a pilgrimage to Puri. As I said, most of her time immediately after the Mahasamadhi of Sri Ramakrishna was spent in pilgrimage. Perhaps the devotees thought they had arranged, because whether she went to Puri or whether she went to Banaras or Vrindavan, in all these places, uh, fortunately, Balram Bose had some guest houses, some houses. He had some residence, a small house, which was frequently used by his relatives and he himself, his family, whenever they went there. So that house was placed at the disposal of Holy Mother. So also in Puri, when she went to Puri, it was Balram Bosa's house where she stayed. From Calcutta, she traveled to Chand Bali, that is a place. I think the trains might have gone up to Chand Bali, where she boarded the Cuttack Canal steamer. And from Cuttack, she went to Puri by bullock cart. Cuttack was in that, maybe there was a small steamer, and that steamer took her to Cuttack, which is one town in Orissa, and from there she went to Puri by bullock cart. Sharat Maharaj, Swami Shardanandji, who later on became Swami Shardanandji, Rakhal Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda, Swami Yogananda, and some other disciples and others. There were some other disciples. They accompanied Mother to Puri. She was accommodated in a house called Kshetra Basi, which belonged to Balram Babu's family. As I said, Balram Babu was a very wealthy zamindar, and he had properties in different places of pilgrimage, including Vrindavan, Kothar, Puri. There were so many places where perhaps he had houses. So one such house, which was known as Kshetra Vasi. So that house belonged to Balram Bosa's family. May not be himself. He had a few brothers. They were zamindars, as we all know. So zamindars means they were landlords. So they owned a lot of property in different states, property in Orissa and property, maybe some property in West Bengal as well. And these zamindars normally would have houses in different pilgrimage places where they would stay whenever they went on a pilgrimage. So in that house she stayed, in that Kshetrabasi. She stayed from November, December, almost November, December, that is Agrayana to Falgun. Falgun is a Hindu month which comes between February and March. So till February and March, from November, December onwards to February, March, she stayed there. The mother lived in a room with a porch in the front. Since the master had not visited the temple of Jagannath, the mother one day took his photograph to the temple concealed under a wrapper and uncovered it before the image of Jagannath. So she had a desire because Sri Ramakrishna in his own lifetime and also Swami Vivekananda. Strangely, Swami Vivekananda could not visit the temple of Jagannath, such a famous pilgrimage place. But somehow, for some reason or the other, his trip was cancelled. Even after returning back to India from America or other his two foreign trips which he did, he could not visit Puri for some reason. And Sri Ramakrishna deliberately refused to go to Puri because he had a premonition that if he goes to Puri, he might give up his life. He will go into some kind of samadhi. So to prevent that, they also did not encourage him to go to Jagannath. But Holy Mother thought since he had not seen or had the darshan of Jagannath the Jagannath Prabhu, Lord Jagannath, who is the presiding deity of Puri, she thought at least because for her, Sri Ramakrishna's photograph was not a mere photograph or an image that had to be worshipped. She considered that image or the photograph she worshipped to be the living image of Sri Ramakrishna. So she took that frame with the photo to the temple and it was concealed because otherwise people will think why is she carrying photographs inside the photo frame inside the temple. So she takes it and quietly wraps it in a wrapper, takes it there, and once she goes to the sanctum sanctorum and just opposite that, she holds the photograph for Sri Ramakrishna to have a darshan, to have a darshan of image of Jagannath. So she does that to fulfill his incomplete wish. I don't know whether he wished to go there or not, but when he was asked once or twice that would you like to go to Puri, as he went to Banaras, he went to Vrindavan, he went to so many places, but he somehow refused to go to the temple of Jagannath in Puri. In fact, he did not go to Puri at all. So now, after visiting the temple of Jagannath, Holy Mother had a wonderful vision. See, all these temples, Brindavan, the Bake Bihari temple, the Vishwanath temple, wherever she went, she had wonderful visions. And most of the visions were not recorded, but some of the visions were recorded because she disclosed what she saw to Yoginma. She was present at that time. She saw Jagannath, strangely, to be like a lion among men sitting on his precious altar. Like Lord Jagannath. Jagannath literally means one who is the Lord of the universe. Jagannath. Nath means the Father. The Father of the universe or the Lord of the universe. So whenever we say, since lion is considered to be the king of animals, so that is why Narendra, the Lord Nara Indra, and one who is the Lord among men, Nara Indra. So the lion among men, that is the word which is normally used in Sanskrit. So Singha, or the word for the Sanskrit word, Singha means something which is great. So when you say, even in English, this phrase is used. He is a lion among men, a lion share. That means a big share, a share which is meant for kings, not for ordinary people. So lion share, or in Sanskrit scripture, there are so many terms which start with Singha, like Singhadwar. Singhadwar means the main gate, the lion's gate, as it were. Literally, if you translate it, the gate, the lion gate means the gate which is the main gate. So something very big, something which is very prominent. It's not like an ordinary gate. So just as a lion is the king among animals, so Lord Jagannath, Holy Mother, saw him. He was like a king seated on an altar, a precious altar. He is a lion among men. So he was the ruler. He was the like the king of the whole universe. And I was attending. I means she saw herself attending on him as his handmaiden. So naturally, when kings are there, there will be handmaidens. So also Sri Krishna, that perhaps since Sri Krishna would not go to Jagannath for one reason, that he would be conscious of his own nature, own divine nature, because he was also an incarnation of Vishnu, or you may say avatars are normally supposed to be incarnations of Lord Vishnu, because he is the sustainer. We have the concept of, we have the triad of gods, Brahma the creator. Brahma doesn't have an incarnation. There cannot be an incarnation of Brahma, because the Nara Leela, the divine Leela, if it has to continue, it has to be of Vishnu. Shiva is the destroyer. Whether you call it destruction of ignorance or destruction of the gross world or the worldliness in men, whatever you may describe it as, Shiva is supposed to be the destroyer. Maybe from a spiritual point of view, Shiva is the destroyer of ignorance. From the gross point of view, he is responsible for destruction. And of course, there's another theory which says that it is the true Shakti that all these gods, the Shakti of Brahma, which creates, the Shakti of Vishnu, which maintains. That is why we saw in the Chandi, Vaishnavi, she is also known as Vaishnavi, Narayani, from Narayana, who is Vishnu, Narayani Namostite. So we worship goddess Devi, because you should remember that the concept of the idea of Chandi, Markandeya Puranam, perhaps it preceded this sectarian age where Hinduism got divided artificially into Shakta cult. It was divided into Shakta cult, the Shaiva cult, where Shiva was the main god. So by turn, these different sects arose in India. But before that, the Chandi was perhaps written. That's why she has been called as Narayani, which is a consort of Narayana, or Shakti, who, or Shiva Shakti. So there are so many terms. Kali, the spiritual counterpart, the feminine spiritual counterpart of Mahakala. So Kali. So she appears as Durga, as Kali, the different deities representing the different aspects. So when Holy Mother saw herself as the handmaiden of, that is the vision she saw. She saw Lord Jagannath sitting on a throne, a precious altar where he was a king of men. So perhaps it is in a subtle way she is conveying that Sri Krishna, because he was one with the Lord of the universe, the Vishnu, the avatar of Vishnu. Perhaps if he had gone there, and even Gaya he did not, because that was Vishnu of Gaya, Gadadhar, Vishnu of Gaya, was what his father saw. So these places he avoided, Gaya as well as Jagannath Puri, where he would have perhaps given up his body, or he would have entered into Mahasamadhi. So he never agreed to go there to visit Jagannath. But at least Holy Mother took his photograph, and she was happy that she could show have Sri Krishna. She made him see the Lord Jagannath. That was her satisfaction. But this vision also is very important. And on her return to Calcutta from Puri, the mother stayed at the house of Master Mahasaya for 3 to 4 weeks, because Master Mahasaya, that Master Mahasaya's house, which is now with the Ramakrishna Mission, it's a big house. He had many rooms. I think when Holy Mother came there, perhaps there was earlier that house, there were so many disputes, perhaps the atmosphere was not so good. So he hesitated even to take Sri Ramakrishna to his house. And in fact, he was so disturbed by the quarrels and the things that happened in his house. And his wife was extremely sensitive to all these things. So he was under tremendous pressure. But somehow now I think since Holy Mother stayed there, that means things would have eased a lot. And Mahendranath Gupta, nearly 3 or 4 weeks, she stayed in in Master Masha's house. And then she went to Atpur together with Baburam, that is Swami Premananda, Naren, Swami Vivekananda, Master Mashay, and Vaikuntanath Sanyal, who was a very good singer. So all of them, they, because Premananda's Atpur house, if you see even today, that house has been renovated, and it is a very big house with so many rooms there. So the definitely Baburam Maharaj's mother was alive, because uh, she was the one who would invite all these young would-be sannyasis. In fact, they had their sannyasa, the formal decision to embrace sannyasa was taken on the Christmas Eve, 24th of December. So she had invited, even at that time, she had invited all the brother disciples. So she had a big house there, and Holy Mother went there after staying few weeks in Master Masha's house. She went to Atpur and stayed for about a week there. From Atpur, it was easy to go to. From Atpur, she had to take a train to Tarakeshwar, and then from Tarakeshwar, she went to Bullock Cart. Went by Bullock Cart to Kamarpukur. So that is the way they had to travel. It was a very, very cumbersome journey to go to Kamarpukur. In fact, Swami Vivekananda, who had a great desire, it is so surprising that all the disciples have visited Kamarpukur, including Swami Yogananda. But somehow Swami Vivekananda could not visit his master's birthplace. For some reason, though it was so near Calcutta, today it is a matter of a few hours you can reach there. But in those days, it was so difficult that he fell sick. He had to go by train, and then something happened and he had to come back. He could not, because the journey after Tarakeshwar was very strenuous. Either you had to walk or go by bullock cart, which was equally bad. Bullock cart speed is slow, so less that because only sick people would go on that, because if they cannot walk, people were unable to walk, but walking was a much better option than going on a bullock cart uh, on those rough roads. Anyway, she went by bullock cart to Kamarpukur via Tarakeshwar. By train, she would have gone up to Tarakeshwar by train. And Master Masha also accompanied, and some others. Maybe they had a few bullock carts, many bullock carts. That was a common mode of transport in those days. So then she went to Kolkata. After there, she lived for about 1 year. So Yogin Ma is now giving the entire description of how mother spent her life after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna. This is 1888, so just 2 years have passed. And in this period, can you imagine, mother had to wander from place to place. Because Kamarpuku, there was hardly anything for her to eat. So see the hardship she had to face. From 86 onwards till 1910. But before that, of course, Nilambar Babu and they had some houses, Lakshmi Villa in Baranagar, in Bagh Bajar. So there were some places where they now and then they would hire, unless she stayed in Kamarpukur or Jairam Bhatti when things were very bad, difficult in Kamarpukur. The Holy Mother's mother, who was alive, took her to Jairam Bhatti also once. So now and then she used to stay in these different places. But she was moving around without a home of her own, which she got only in 1910 when Sharat Maharaj started building the Udbodhan. So she practically had a place of her own only after 1910 for about 10 years. And even after coming to Udbodhan, more or less she settled down, but till then there was no common place. So going to Puri, then going to Atpur, because somebody or the other would invite her, or going on a pilgrimage, spend as much time as possible. So that is how she spent her time. And you can imagine what the strain would be if a person is constantly traveling. It's like monks, sannyasins in those days were not supposed to stay in one place, go from place to place. So she was practically moving from place to place, not settling down anywhere, like a uh, like some monk would do or a nun would do. So after that, so Yoginma is giving the entire, and of course she had these people with her, not that she traveled alone, because it was not possible. But she had these companions, Yoginma, Gaurima, and somebody or the other would be there, and some sevaks like Yogananda. Most of the time it was Swami Yogananda who, because he was Holy Mother's first disciple. So he would be going there, and then she goes to uh, but before, she stayed for a long time in Kamarpukur. She lived for almost a year, and after that, that is 89, she must have come, or almost 90, she came to Kombuli Tola, that is the place, and stayed with Master Mashe just before the Dole festival. Dole Purnima is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthday. So before that, she came to Master Mashe's house, where he lived in Kombulitola, and then she lived in Balram's Bose during the latter's last illness. So Balram Bose was sick, and he was about to die. He was about to pass away. So during that period also, she was there in Balram Bose's house, and she continued there in Balram Bose's to stay in Balram Bose's house till he died. So his illness, he was terminally ill, and Holy Mother stayed there. Perhaps that was her way of conferring grace upon this devoted soul, Balram Bose. Then next, after Balram Bose's passing away, she stayed in a rented house in Gusudi near the cremation ground of Belur from May, June, that is Jyeshtha, to Bhadra, that is Bhadrapad, they say, August to September of 1890. So this is when Swami Vivekananda left for his Parivrajaka days. 1890. She was in Gusudi at that time. Gusudi was a rented house where Swami Vivekananda came to Holy Mother and said, "Till I, I won't return back till I have the power to move this world." So Holy Mother was a bit frightened. He said, "Oh, is he going to leave us permanently?" So that's why she called Gangadhar, who was Swami Akhandananda, who later on became Swami Akhandananda, because he had previous experience of wandering up to Tibet and many other places, Himalayas. He had that habit of wandering. So he knew many things. So Holy Mother requested Gangadhar Maharaj, said, "Please go with Swamiji." Of course, Swamiji wanted to go alone. So from Delhi up to Delhi, he allowed Akhandanandji, and now and then some other disciples also met him. So Meerut was the last place in UP where he stayed. 8 of them stayed there. But then he found that I have left the monastery. I don't want any attachment. He was in search of something. His heart was troubled. So we do not know exactly what the reason was, because he has not clearly defined why he wanted to be alone. So after that, Akhandanandji, because Holy Mother had told him at Gusudi 1890, when Swami Vivekananda left the Baranagar monastery, to go and follow a wandering life and to follow a parivrajak life. Akhandanandji also did not want to leave him. So they went to Almora. Then unfortunately there was the news of the sister's death. He got a telegram when he was meditating in a cave. He was very happy there when he went to that cave in Almora in the Himalayas. That was his dream. And because Akhandanandji knew the Himalayas, he took him with him. And suddenly he gets a telegram saying that his sister had committed suicide because of ill treatment by the in-laws. So whatever it is, it was a very, very big shock. And then Swamiji decides to come. Perhaps that increased his desire to be alone. He just wanted to get away from this world, from all the attachments he had. So he tells Akhandanandji and all his brother disciples that please don't follow me, let me go alone. But Akhandanandji doesn't, so though he agrees in the beginning, he somehow manages to chase Swami Vivekananda, and most of the time when Swami Vivekananda, from there he went to Alwar, Rajasthan, Gujarat. For a long time he was in Gujarat wandering. So Akhandanandji, because Holy Mother had told him to be with Naren so that he doesn't have to suffer for want of food and all those things. He was just living by begging, eating whatever he could get in Bhiksha and staying anywhere, maybe sometimes in the palace like Alwar Maharaja's palace, sometimes in the huts, sometimes under a tree, sometimes in the forest. So he had a wonderful experience, and he was somehow wanted to be alone. For 6 months practically he was alone. But finally, at the end of his Gujarat tour, somehow Akhandanandji went on inquiring. Every time he went to Alwar, they said he has just left. Then he went to Khetri. There he found he had just left the Khetri Maharaja's palace. Then he went to Abu. Abu is also in Rajasthan. Then he went to Ahmedabad. There he found he had just left a few days. So he was chasing Swami Vivekananda practically. And finally at Narayan Sarovar in Kutch, the famous place, he was determined somehow to reach there. And though he was attacked by robbers, Akhandanandji, and they took away everything. He said, please take away, but spare my life. Not because he was afraid of death, but because he wanted to meet his beloved, fulfill the wish of Holy Mother that you should be with him. So finally, he manages, with great risk, he somehow manages to catch Swami Vivekananda in Mandvi. That is where he meets him just before Narayan Sarovar. And then Swami Vivekananda kindly agrees to allow him to accompany him only up to a certain place. Then from Junagadh, from Palitana and Junagadh, he tells him, now please leave me alone. You had a desire to meet me and see me, and you fulfilled the wishes of Holy Mother, but I want to be alone. So he tells him to part ways and go to Jamnagar and stay there, where he practically was requested by one of the Pandits there, not Pandits, one of the doctors there, who was a famous Ayurvedic physician, and some other people devoted to start the first center. They would have started a center. He wanted to give a land for a Ramakrishna temple. But somehow Akhandanandji said, no, I'm wandering. I can't stay in one place. And then he leaves. He tries to chase Swami Vivekananda, but by that time Swami Vivekananda had already left, passed through Bangalore, gone to Chennai, and almost, I think he was planning to go to America. And he comes to Bombay. Then the Khetri Maharaja buys a ticket for him, first class ticket, and then finally he leaves for Chicago, after leaves for Vancouver. And by changing ships in Japan. So we know all that story. But this happened in 1890 when Holy Mother was living in a rented house in Gusudi near the cremation ground where Nivedita also lived. And Nivedita, there was a small house because Nivedita used to live in a rented house there, and this was the place where Holy Mother also lived. There she had an attack in 1890 after Swamiji left. She had an attack of blood dysentery, which was a very dangerous disease because of lack of hygiene. The water was not good. Unless you were careful, this blood dysentery was a very dangerous disease. She was shifted because she became so weak that she was shifted to a rented house at Baranagar belonging to Saurindra Mohan Tagore for her medical treatment. So I think the Tagore family would have given permission, or maybe they rented it. It was not given free of cost, and the disciples decided to keep her there because it was near Calcutta and she could get the treatment for her medical treatment. It was a better place. So she then shifts to Baranagar. Following a short stay, after recovering, mother moves to Balram Babu's house, from where she returned to Jairam Bhatti after Durga Puja. So you see, this was her constant travel. So we see the wonderful, it's at this age, with so much of a responsibility. Radhu is there, his mother, so many other people were there, companions were there. So mother with the whole retinue, she was put into so much of difficulty, but she patiently bore all these things, going to Jairambati, going to Kamarpukur, then spent almost, see, from there, mother came to Nilambar Babu's house in Belur. We do not know the exact reason why this she had to travel so much. But in June, July 1893, this was just before Swami Vivekananda left for, he left much earlier, he left in May for Chicago, but just before the Parliament of Religions, she was in Nilambar Babu's house. Then she spent the month of Falgun at Kailwar in Bihar. Now we don't know from all the way from Belur she goes to Bihar. Some house she spent there. From there she visited Varanasi and Vrindavan for a second time. The first time after the passing away of master, she had gone, but this is the second time. This time together with her mother and brothers. Perhaps she wanted to go with them on a pilgrimage. So the brother and her mother was still alive in 1893. So she goes to the Brindavan and Varanasi for the second time, and then she comes back to Calcutta, where she lives with Master Mashe in his new residence in, I think in his another, perhaps he had two or maybe we do not know, Kulutala residence for about a month, and then returned to her native village, that is Jairambati. The next time when she came to Calcutta, the mother lived for 5 or 6 months in a house attached to a godown on the bank of Ganga at Bagh Bazaar. It was at this house, this particular house, so that Nag Mashe saw the mother for the first time. So Nag Mashe was Thakur's devotee from Bangladesh, from East Bengal. So he had come all the way, and this was the house. There are so many houses associated. Even most of the houses are still there. Uh, I had the opportunity to visit most of the houses, which unfortunately in the old part of Calcutta, which are still there, maybe in a slightly modified form. So this house in Bagh Bazaar, this was the house where she was staying on the bank of the Ganga, attached to a godown. Maybe it was a very uncomfortable little house. Maybe it was not used. So somehow she was living in all these places in Calcutta, all over Calcutta, all over India practically, going to Bihar now, then Vrindavan. So just continuously moving. So that perhaps was one reason why she never got attached to any place. It's not that she stayed in Kamarpukur. Maybe she will stay there for some time and then some invitation will come somewhere, she will go. So then she went and stayed for 1.5 years in Jairambati, that is after 1893. And on coming back to Calcutta, she again stayed in a house in front of Girish Babu's. Maybe it was rented and it was very close to Girish Babu's house. In this house, Nivedita lived with mother for nearly 3 weeks. Her next residence was, this is the famous house at 16 Bospada Lane, which is now a beautiful memorial, Nivedita Memorial, in the name of Sister Nivedita, very close to Girish Ghosh's house. It was here that Nivedita first organized her school. So this place was a very small, it's not a very small house, but it was a dilapidated sort of structure. And that is where she first started her school. Next, the mother lived in a house in front of Ramakrishna Lane on Bagh Bazaar Street. Sharat too stayed there. From there, mother moved back to her native place. So you can imagine from 1886 to 1894, we get a very pretty good idea because of Yogin Ma's description, because she was with Holy Mother, how many places Holy Mother had to change. And with all this retinue of hers, some of this like Radhu and Radhu's mother, both of them were partially insane. I mean, they were having so many psychological problems. So with all this people, of course, with the help of Yogin Ma and others, companions, she managed to move from place to place for reasons best known. We Of course, we know one reason, that there was no permanent residence like Udbodhan. So you could not be staying in one place for a long time as a guest. So even Kamarpukur and Jairambati, when things become very difficult, or she falls sick or something happens to, there were so many reasons for moving out and coming to Calcutta, but she would not be able to stay. So I think Swami Shardanandji was tired by this constant movement and this age, if Holy Mother had to move so much. So then he decided to take the risk and build a nice permanent house for Mother, so she does not have to go anywhere. So she comes, and then she was very much, she became very thin because of an attack of malaria. So in spite of all this trouble, she contracted so many diseases that would have um, shattered her body also. So with great difficulty, she went again to stay in her native village, that is Jairambati, and then she came to live. So by this time, after so many trips in and out of Calcutta, Jairambati, Kamarpukur, Calcutta, then hired houses in almost different locations of Calcutta, she finally returned to the Udbodhan house. Maybe this was 1910. And then she lived there practically for a very long time. Then, but still, from there she visited Kothar in Orissa, where Balram Babu had a house. Then she went to Madras, Bangalore, on the request of Swami Ramakrishnananda, who wanted the Holy Mother to visit these centers of Ramakrishna in South India, because he believed Rameshwar and other places. He wanted to take her. He arranged this trip. She went by train. Madras, Bangalore, everything was arranged by Shashi Maharaj, Swami Ramakrishnanandji, who wanted the southern part of India to be blessed by the holy feet of Holy Mother. And she kindly agreed, and it was a long tour, and all arrangements were made, because Swami Ramakrishnanandji himself at that time was suffering from an incurable disease, that is tuberculosis in those days. But somehow it was not detected. He had fever, he had so many, but still he was keen that Holy Mother comes to this southern part of India, and he made all arrangements for her stay. So after visiting all these places in South India, she returns to the Udbodhan house. 2 days later, the Holy Mother goes to her native village, where she gave away Radhu in marriage. Radhu was old enough. Old enough means that it was, in those days, young women would be married. So he gave away Radhu in marriage. This time she returned from Jairambati to Calcutta after about a year, and from there she went to Varanasi in October-November 1912. So this is after shifting to Udbodhan. After staying there for about 3 weeks in Varanasi, she came back to Calcutta. Then Yoginma says how Holy Mother is to lead her daily life. We get some wonderful insights of the struggle she had to undergo, how much work she had to do apart from this movement, which itself was a very difficult task, to constantly be on the move, get set, get adjusted. We find it so exhausting even to move from one place to another. And if you keep moving constantly without all the facilities, normally she was not wealthy enough to have all the facilities. So there was so much of hardship. So some of the hardship she had to face are described by Yogin Ma here. In her younger days, mother had to cook often. Whenever her mother was unable to cook for some reason or the other, this was much before in Jairambati, she had to do the cooking herself. The mother said, I used to cook and my father would lift the rice pot from the fire. She was so young. For some reason, mother would fall sick. She would take the responsibility of cooking and feeding her brothers and other siblings. But she was so small that though she knew how to cook, she could not lift the rice pot and take it to some other place. She had to call the father, call her father to do that. Later, the mother spent much of her time in attending to her relations and devotees, like Radhu and all. That is much later. But in the initial stages, it was Jairambati. So this with this we end the reminiscences of Yogin Ma, the first part of the second volume, the second part of the Gospel of Holy Mother, where Yogin Ma has given a bird's eye view of the whole, or maybe a brief description of what Holy Mother went through, the struggle she underwent. The details are not there from the latter part. She has condensed, and perhaps her memory was not so sharp when she recorded it. So whatever she could remember, but she has mentioned all these things, giving us an idea of how Holy Mother moved from place to place, blessing everybody, carrying on her spiritual ministration, cooking food, looking after these madcaps who were surrounding her, then looking after the disciples, monastic as well as. So it was a untiring life of dedication of the Sangha Janani, or the motherhood, with the feeling with which she looked after everybody as her own children. Everybody was a child for her, whether it was her own relatives, whether it were mad people, whether they were selfish people, unreasonable people, or whether they were good monks and some very nice, helpful devotees. For her, her love was practically distributed and showered upon all without any reservation, because she was the mother of all, mother of the holy, mother of the wicked, mother of the evil. So mother cannot be partial to any of her children. So that is what we see. So there is one more devotee. Yogin Ma, of course, was a renunciate, you can say, though she was not a nun, but she lived like a nun because she was a widow, like Golap Ma and others, except Gauri Ma, who was a nun, even in nun. You will see. But now we'll come to some reminiscences of householders, especially by one who was very close to Holy Mother, Srimati Shirod Bala Roy. So we will not begin it. It's almost 6:45 now, but I'll just read the first paragraph because that will give us an idea how she was introduced to Holy Mother. Shirod Bala Roy says, I came from our suburban home to Calcutta to see Holy Mother for the first time. I was feeling unwell. I went to Bagh Bazar in a carriage. On the way, I was feeling giddiness and nausea. I somehow arrived at the mother's house at Bagh Bazar, and climbing the staircase, saw the mother at the door of the long room adjoining the staircase. This is at Udbodan, that is Bagh Bazar. She was on her way to take her bath. She was standing with one of her hands on the door frame as if she was waiting for me. As soon as her eyes fell on me, she smilingly said, Where do you come from, child? Why have you come? Seeing the sick body, she was already sick, but she was keen to meet Holy Mother. I replied, I have come to see the Holy Mother, because she did not know who Holy Mother was, Sri Ma Sharda Devi. So she says, I have come to see the Holy Mother. At once she said, I am the mother, my child. The master is in the other room. His picture. Master was not alive. Salute the master and take your seat there. I shall be coming after my bath. Saying this, the mother left the place. She introduced him to Thakur's picture, that beautiful shrine which is still there, and asked her to meditate there and sit there till she came back. I went to the door of the shrine room and saluted the master from there and then sat down. I had carried some sweets to offer to the master. Nalini Didi came and sprinkling a little Ganges water on the packet of sweets, took the packet from my hand and kept it in that room. In the meantime, the mother hurriedly finished her bath and returned. I noticed that the worship of the master and the offering of fruits and sweets to him were already over, and everything was still lying in the shrine room. So, as I was feeling giddy, I was afraid that if mother gave me prasad to eat, to take, I might vomit. When she asked me, Have you brought something for the master? I pointed to the packet of sweets I had brought, saying, Yes, it has been kept there. The mother held the packet containing the sweets before the master's face and said, "O Lord, please eat." That is her way of offering. Like Shashi Maharaj used to take the plate and just sit before Sri Ramakrishna and ask him to eat as if he was present there, live, ready to take the offering, eat the offering. Then she gave me prasad consisting of some fruits on a brass dish and a little sharbat, that is a cold drink in a glass, and said, "Take this prasad. It will not cause any vomiting." Taking a little Ganges water from a water pot, she sprinkled it on my head. She took some Ganga water and purified her and said, "I shall wait for you in the other room. Come there after taking the prasads." So she assured her, "Nothing will happen to you. You will not vomit. Take this sharbat and come." Strangely enough, immediately after eating it, I began to feel all right. Then I went to the room where mother was seated. To me, it appeared as if she were the universal mother, seated on an asana like a queen. She was, of course, sitting in a very simple chair, perhaps, but she felt that there was this queen of the universe, the universal divine mother, sitting on uh, her chair like a queen. That is her first feeling she got. Golapma, Gaurima, and Yoginma were seated around her. Though I felt mother to be my very own, the presence of others sitting there made me somewhat hesitant. I became worried whether I would be able to tell the mother my innermost thoughts. She felt a bit shy that mother she could confide everything, but what about these three women who were sitting around her? Then, Holy Mothers, I said to her, "I could not see you during the last 8 years in spite of my utmost efforts. Even after coming as far as Calcutta, I could not see you. I had to go back." On hearing this, Gaurima remarked, "Can anybody see the mother before the time is ripe?" So all the while, mother is sitting quietly, and this Shirod Bala Roy, Srimati, because she was a married woman, naturally it was not easy for her to come. So that's why Gaurima says, she was a nun. So she said, "Can anybody see the mother before the time is ripe?" I said, "I feel that the time has come now, mother. Now I have seen you. Kindly accept me. I have come here with the desire of receiving initiation from you. I have heard that one cannot have initiation before the time is ripe. Again, I hear that you send back some persons on the plea that they do not belong to this place. But if you refuse me, I shall not be able to live any longer." So this, see the yearning of this lady, because she was immersed in maybe some kind of problem and she was yearning to come. So you can imagine nearly 8 years, in spite of her efforts, the people from her family would not have allowed her to come. Even though she visited Kolkata so many times, every time she came, she could not meet. Perhaps the time was not ripe. But now she feels, now that I have come, please give me initiation and don't refuse me, as you sometimes refuse some people, saying that you do not, if you think that they do not belong to you, but don't do that. If you refuse me, I shall not be able to live any longer. Staring at me intently, the mother said, "No, you will have initiation." Then she asked, "Daughter, what do you take on Ekadashi?" I mean, many of the traditional Hindus would perform Ekadashi and take some special diet on that. I replied, "Formerly I used to eat sago, but learning that it is adulterated with various other things, I don't take it now." As soon as she heard this, the mother said, "No, no, I say you should take sago. It will keep your body cool." Then, with deep sorrow in her voice, the mother said, "Child, you have been practicing much austerity. I say to you, don't do it any further. Your body has almost turned into a piece of wood. How will you perform spiritual practices if your health is spoiled, my child?" Then Holy Mother was concerned. She said, "Don't perform so many austerities." Perhaps there were several reasons. Maybe she was doing it out of force. There was some depression, some sadness in her life, obviously. And because she goes to the extent of saying, I cannot live if you don't initiate me. Then she says, she asked, Holy Mother asked, do you use any oil? I said, no, I have. Oh, she was a widow, though her name is Srimati Shirodbala Roy. This sentence shows that she was a widow. That's why there were so many restrictions. In those days, it was very, very difficult to for a widow to lead a normal life. And they were being ill-treated, not only ill-treated, but also they had to live practically in isolation without any kindness shown to them. Perhaps the family who had lost their son would consider a widow to be an ill omen because of, and they would blame her indirectly or even sometimes directly for the death of the husband. So they would not allow her to use all the cosmetics like oil and other things. So Holy Mother knew that. Seeing her face and the dry skin, perhaps she thought, why don't you use oil? Because it's very common in Bengal to rub oil on the body before the bath. She says, I haven't used it since I was widowed. On hearing this, she said, the use of oil keeps the head cool, therefore use oil. I said, as I have not used it for a long time, I have begun to hate to touch it. I shall not be able to use oil, Mother. So because of her constantly being reminded that as a widow, you should not do this, you should not eat this, you should wear only white clothes. There's so many restrictions that practically she came to hate oil. Golapma said, though she is a mere child, she has spoiled her health by fasting and practicing other austerities. Now, widows were supposed to do that. If you see the life of Yoginma, Golapma, and even Gopalerma, they were no doubt widows, but they led spiritual life and practiced a lot of austerity. If you see Gopalerma, 30 years, the only meal she took was what prasad she offered to her Gopala. She used to cook only a little amount and rest of the day she would not cook anything. Offer bhog to her Gopala and as prasad whatever was there she would consume it, and lived in a small hut and lived a practically isolated life of a nun. And practicing austerities means not using things which normally a householder or a housewife would use. So Golapma, seeing her, says that though she is such a young woman, such a young child, mere child, by fasting willingly or otherwise, most of them widows did it willingly because that is what the Shastra said, you would be condemned by society in those days. It was so pathetic, the life of these young widows, that even if you wanted to eat some certain things, you had to forcibly practice austerity. So whether it was intentional or whether it was voluntary or involuntary, we do not know, but her health had been spoiled. Then Gaurima said, dear, why have you cut off your hair? I said, widows in our part of our country do not grow their hair. They had to even shave off their hair. In some parts, not all. She replied, without hair, one's eyesight deteriorates. That's what Gaurima said. Why don't you keep your hair? Since you have dedicated your body to Sri Krishna. Now that is what widows normally did. They were asked, maybe it was a good practice to consider Sri Krishna as the husband after the passing away of, they were not allowed to remarry, you see, widow remarriage was not allowed. Later on they made a law to allow that if somebody wanted. But it was a very orthodox period of Indian history where not only were they not allowed to remarry, but they had to practice certain social customs which made life very difficult. So she says the hair, you have married Krishna, so you have every right to grow hair. It does not belong to you, it belongs to the Lord. So that is what Gaurima is trying to convince her, that you grow hair. Yoginma now said, the body is the temple of God. It is wise to keep it fine. Don't perform austerities and shatter your body. This is the temple of God. If Krishna is staying inside in your heart, then how can you allow all these things to happen to you? But the mother said, "Oh, you have done well. Keeping one's hair gives rise to a feeling of fashionableness to some extent, for one has to take care of it." So you see how Holy Mother considers this a very trivial thing, whether one keeps hair or not. If she is uncomfortable with hair, then let her not keep. And Holy Mother tells the practical side of it, not that she should, if she does it voluntarily, what is wrong. And moreover, she says one doesn't have to take care. If there is long hair, then you have spent so much of time. So what you have done is right. So Holy Mother in this case is supporting what she has done. You have overcome the craze for luxuriant locks and you have also come here. You see how her discrimination is working. Apart from the social customs, it was not forced upon her perhaps. And Shirod Bala Roy was a very devoted young woman, young lady, or a young girl maybe. And she had voluntarily given up because she had higher intentions, not because she had to she was to satisfy somebody. She could have defied that and grown her hair, but somehow uh, Holy Mother agrees and knows, can read her mind that she's doing this not to uh, practice austerity for the sake of austerity, but because it helped her to live a simple life. You have now achieved that for which you lived so austerely. Now I say, don't indulge in now, but she says, you have done the right thing till now. But now you don't, since you have come to me, now you can give up all these austerities. Don't do it any longer. You will have initiation tomorrow. Come here at 8 o'clock in the morning. It will be nice to take a holy dip in the Ganges and to see Mother Kali on the day of initiation. I reflected that in seeing the Holy Mother, I had already seen Mother Kali and that I had become pure by touching her holy feet. Then I saluted her and left for home. Now we will conclude because it's a big thing. Her husband's younger brother was Satish Chandra Roy, who had already taken Diksha from Holy Mother, and many things are there. Now it is about some background of her life, how she became widowed, and after she became widowed, what happened, and how she became dejected, and what was the turning point in her life. All this we'll discuss in the next class. So I think there won't be any time for questions. I'll just see. One question is there. I'll see. Okay, there's a nice question. Why can't we tolerate hardships these days, as well as Ma Sharda Devi did back then? Why do we get tensed, anxious, and frustrated with hardships in our lives? It's a very simple answer. We can't do it because we have not been trained. Our mind has not been trained. In those days, not that they did not feel the hardships and not that they tolerated it unwillingly. They would have definitely tolerated it or they would have accepted it willingly. One should not assume that in those days they would just tolerate it unless there was a higher ideal, unless they had given up the gross and they found something more important, meditation, japa. Holy Mother used to say, with all these hardships, she said, at least till Sri Ramakrishna was there was so much of hardship. She had to cook for so many people. Not that before Sri Ramakrishna's passing away or life was easy. It was difficult before his passing away, afterwards also. But she says, I felt as if a picture of divine bliss, Amrita, was in my heart always. And I never felt dejected when he was there. No matter, work would go on, the daily routine would go on, very hard work. They could tolerate because they had some higher joy which they had got by result of spiritual practices. We feel frustrated because perhaps we do not get that higher joy. It is only the higher joy, when we get the higher joy, that the lower hardships and the gross troubles are forgotten. And the moment you forget them, the moment you do that, then peace comes. But if you try to forget them without any higher joy, then it becomes a big burden. So that's why we get tensed, we get anxious, because we do not have an outlet. We don't have somebody or some Ishta or some divine personality whom we can just pass on that sorrow and be relieved. So partly it is, most of it is mental. Physical hardships everybody faces. How much hardship person faces if he has to earn money? You might have seen, it is a very common fact that to earn money people go all the way. They stay awake for nights and they are full of tension. When nobody says I feel so tensed when I'm earning money, because the reward is so high that for $1 million he is prepared to work day and night shift, this thing, that thing, take so much of risk, undergo so much of tension, go to doctor, take so many things, and still he doesn't complain because he has voluntarily chosen the path of earning money. So similarly, for Holy Mother, because there was a higher goal, if people can undergo hardships for ideals. Now there are people who give up their life for certain ideals they hold. They don't mind any hardship because that ideal is so prominent in their minds. So also here Holy Mother, because she was completely immersed in the higher God consciousness, then all these small troubles, they become very trivial. Okay, and the last question, very short question, I'll give a short answer. When food is offered to God, it becomes as prasad. What about when offered Sur, Sangeet, Om, in what form it comes back as a prasad? It comes back the years. Prasad is not just what you eat. Eating is one way of accepting prasad. But if you offer anything, whether you offer work, it will come back as prasad to you in a subtle way as your punya karma. If you do music, if you offer music, then it will come back to you. It may not come back to you as a gross, as the gross prasad comes. Even when the gross prasad is taken, people just enjoy the taste. They don't know what spiritual value they are getting. Do they? They don't. That's why they say people nowadays, I mean, as days progress, there are more and more items. Not because you want prasad, or not because the people want prasad, because they want delicious items. They know what is tasty, so they offer to God what they will get back, and they are interested only in the gross things. But if it is offered with devotion, then even a simple thing which may not be tasty, but it is prasad. Nag Mahasaya used to eat the leaf plate on which he didn't even bother to see banana leaf. Can you believe? So people had to snatch away the banana leaf. He said, no, that is also prasad that has been offered to Thakur. So it was very difficult, and whenever he came, Holy Mother and others would give him steel plates because then he could not eat it. So prasad should not be taken as only gross prasad. For us, khichdi prasad or any prasad after a celebration, we think, we no doubt it has some spiritual value. But even prayers, even singing, if somebody sings in front of the Lord, even during Durga Puja, some other form of seva, that is also some kind of offering. It doesn't have to be only food offering. Prasad can be had of any sense organ can be used, and you can give something and get the prasad and enjoy it. Okay, so I'll take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishnarpanamastu.